Welcome back. Now we'll hear from the candidates in District 3E. Let's begin with challenger Phil Iseli. Mr. Iseli, your opening statement of 1 minute, please.
Well, I'm running for a candidate in 3C or 3E, and I'm pretty much the conservative choice. I hope to do a good job for everybody. I appreciate their votes. If you want to know more about me, you can find it on my website, which is www.philiseli.us. I'm basically just running because I feel people need a choice. I don't think there's a conservative choice in West Anchorage right now. People have talked to me about some of the leadership of Tim Steele, and they think that he might be running out of enthusiasm and he could be doing a better job, and I would like a chance to do a better job for the people of West Anchorage, and that's why I'm running.
Okay. If elected, where will you focus your energy?
I think initially I would focus it on the budget. I would like to see us do like a 5-year budget plan so that we have some idea of what's coming up in the future. I think they just do it year by year now, and it's kind of you rush to get it done for the last minute and you say, boy, I'm glad that's done, and then you live in the dark until the next year. And I think if we actually planned out what we were doing for the next 5 years or so, it would be a lot more manageable.
Could you do that without becoming inflexible? I mean, after all, it's pretty hard to know where we're going to be in 5 years. Financially,
looking at the future,
yeah.
You can't plan anything out, but you can look at things that are coming up, and it's better to know what's going to be there instead of just sitting back waiting for it to happen. There would be flexibility, but it gives you an idea, a goal to shoot for. I mean, if I'm running a business, I want to look at the balance sheets every month and kind of forecast out what I'm going to be doing in the next year or 2 years, or where I want to be 3 years down the road. And if you don't have that kind of financial planning, then your business is going to be a lot harder. You need to know how much money you need to take in every given year before you can decide how much money you're going to spend, or else you'll spend more than you make.
The dispute over the Sullivan administration's revision of the labor law has dominated Assembly news. Did you support the change? If so, why? If not, why not?
There's a lot of controversy on that. Most of the people in the groups that I've been to, and I've been to a lot of different meetings, say that it's probably an okay law. It's just the way that he presented it was bad, and they're upset about the presentation. And maybe Mayor Sullivan lacks a little tact once in a while, but I think it's something that's needed, and quite frankly, I'm not sure that it's the end answer to everything, but it's a step towards the right direction, because eventually, if we don't do something, we're going to run out of money, and it's going to be real difficult on us.
A couple of questions about elections. First of all, the labor law referendum is going to be voted on in November rather than in April, the coming election that you're in. Do you think that was the wise move?
I think it probably was. The April election is pretty much dominated by unions, and I think that you'd have more of a vote in November. Looking at the election process, when you sit back and think in April, you have roughly 20% of the people that vote. Your elected official that's representing you is elected with maybe 10 to 12% of the vote, which I would like better representation in that. I figure if we can't get at least 25% people out to vote, maybe we should just leave that position empty.
Why do you suppose people don't show up?
They have various different reasons. Sometimes they think it's not important. Sometimes it's not highlighted enough in the news. Sometimes they're just not worried about it. And generally, you see a lot of the unions get out and vote during this time. And it drives our government for the next 3 years. So it's an important thing, and I really wish more conservatives would get out and vote the way that the unions get out
And then
and
moving
vote.
the election to November, not just the referendum, but all the municipal elections, I take it then you feel that that's a wise move.
I think that's a wise move. I think we'll have a bigger voter turnout, and I think that we need more voters to get out there because, like I say, a 10 or 12% representation of the city is hardly enough to do all your daily planning on. I mean, I would like to see at least 25% of the vote get out there, or just not elect a person to that or pass that bond.
Okay. There have been a number of stories about the police force and the reduction of the size of the police force. Do we have an adequate number of police officers here in Anchorage to protect the public?
I think with talking to the police officers, I think we could probably use more police officers. It seems strange that every time we decide to cut the budget, it's always police officers and firemen, and every time we decide to cut the school budget, it's usually teachers. When there's a lot more people besides police officers, firemen, and teachers, but that doesn't get you the response that you want through the news media.
Okay. The expansion rebuild of the Port of Anchorage seems to be an endless source of tribulation. There's talk of money wasted, multiple delays, many fingers have been pointed over a long period of years. We're in a mess here. How do we get out of it?
I think we're headed in the right direction. I think we need to keep a close eye on it. Some things are just common sense. I think if we hire decent, qualified people to do it, and we watch over their shoulder, that we should be able to continue forth and actually have it accomplished.
Okay. The legislature continues to fund the proposed Knik Arm crossing, frequently at levels not that those advocates of the crossing would like, yet the crossing continues to be a source of controversy. What's your view on the proposed Knik Arm crossing?
Well, there's a lot of people that are really in to support the Knik Arm crossing. And the other side of it, there's a lot of people that aren't interested in it, and it's a very politically sensitive issue because if you build the Knik Arm crossing, you're going to have a mass flux of people and businesses move to the valley, which is going to hurt our tax base, which is already pretty heavy right now. It'll drop the cost of housing probably because there will be abundant housing just over on the other side of the bridge. The other side of it is the bridge will be extremely difficult to build, I think, because you don't really have a good foundation in the bottom of the river. It's not like you're building straight against bedrock. But then again, if you can put those drill derricks out in the middle of Knik Arm, you can probably build a substantial bridge across there. I would like to see it tied in with maybe a power generation unit of some sort, and I think you could tie the port into it, and if you put all three of those things together, I think that it would pay for itself on a continual basis.
Do you think customers or users, I guess they would be, of the bridge, the crossing, would be price sensitive to the tolls? Or is there some point where you think a toll might be too high to start diminishing the number of people who'd want to use it?
I think it's probably true. In Ketchikan, they've been talking about putting a bridge across there, and I've read the bridge studies there, and they said basically you can run 4 ferries pretty much almost non-stop for what it would cost to build and maintain the bridge. And on the ferries, they're charging $5 to get back and forth across there. At least they were the last time I was going across there. And they were paying, it cost them like $600,000 to do that, but they were generating $1.2 million in revenue just with the ferries. And you never had to wait over 15 minutes for a ferry. So that might be a viable option until you can get a bridge built there.
What is Anchorage's #1 transportation priority?
I would think that you would want to improve our bus systems. If you're going to build like a bypass or something, I don't understand why they don't build one level up. If we if we built a layer of streets on top of the streets that we have now, there'd be plenty of room for pedestrians and bicycles underneath and cars to go on the top. So I think that would remove a lot of problems from downtown, and you could actually put parking lots up above other buildings that would give you a lot more area for parking, but I think that's probably way down the road from right now.
Okay. Alcohol continues to be involved in a disproportionate percentage of crime and disorder. What can be done to reduce the damage alcohol does to our community?
Well, I think we kind of encourage it because a significant amount of our economy is alcohol driven. If you look at the number of nonprofit organizations that we have to deal with that, and like the Red Roof Inn is in Brother Francis's Shelter and Beans Cafe, basically when somebody comes here, if they're not really feel like working, we'll go ahead and we give them clothes, we give them food, we give them shelter, and then we let them panhandle on the streets so that they have drinking money. I think that most of that is enabling, and I think if we required something from them for the things that we give them, it might improve the situation. But currently, I think that an awful lot of jobs depend on those guys being inebriated on the streets, and if they were all gone, that would take a chunk out of our economy. So until somebody really gets serious about it and says we're not going to enable them all the time for all the different things, I think we're going to continue to have the problem.
So that would mean, I guess, taking away either materials or facilities that they have now, right?
I don't think you'd necessarily have to take it away, but I think you would have to ask for something in exchange.
For example?
For example, if you want shelter, maybe you need to go down and clean a park out, or shovel sidewalks, or clean some of the creeks, or some of the other things that we have people doing that these people are more than capable of doing, but they'd rather not.
Okay. What do you like best about Anchorage?
I've heard this question before. It's close to my job.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
What would you like to change about Anchorage, given the opportunity to be czar for a day?
That's a good question. I like Anchorage, but I'm afraid that in the next few years, if things go the way they are, that I won't be able to afford to live here anymore. And I think I'd like to see us stay more like we are instead of trying to transition into the Agenda 21 where everybody bicycles around and walks on sidewalks and everything looks the same, and you have 2.1 trees in your front yard and everybody's house is colored a specific color in this block. I kind of like the old Anchorage where everybody just kind of, this is what my house is going to look like, I want it to be like this, and I'm going to make it like that.
There's no substitute for a pickup with flower pots in the front yard?
No, that's a person's choice.
Okay. Anchorage municipal elections are nominally nonpartisan, but are they really nonpartisan?
Well, I'd have to say they are because I'm not affiliated with any party, but I think they are fairly partisan, and just because you don't have a specific letter out beside your name doesn't mean that those people don't support and not support the different candidates.
Okay. If you visit our libraries, you will find them crowded, but are we appropriating enough money, providing enough resources for adequate library service?
I think the biggest problem we have is we don't take care of what we have. I think libraries are going to have to do a transition to actually stay in business because people are getting away from books with the internet. But if you turn them into more of an internet learning center, I think that they will be valuable far into the future.
And would you be willing to appropriate new money to accomplish that?
I would. I would like to fix up some of the buildings. It just kills me when I walk into the Lusac Library and it's fallen down around us, and we will ignore it and try and spend money for tennis courts that eventually we won't be able to afford, and they'll be falling down too. And then instead of fixing them up, we'll look at building another set.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Isley.